It gives you a taste of what it was like to live back in ancient Rome. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another vlog. For newcomers, check out my channel and go ahead and click that subscribe button for more fast-paced videos on works of art from all around the world. So today we are back in the city of Rome. We're going to be talking about a bronze, ancient equestrian sculpture of an ancient Roman emperor, and that emperor is none other than Marcus Aurelius. Now, just a quick heads up, the original sculpture has been moved inside the Capitoline Museums, which is on the Campidoglio, because it was suffering from conservation issues. And since you can't really talk inside the Capitoline Museums, I'm going to be jumping back and forth from the copy that is found outside in the piazza and the original inside. Okay, let's get started. This is an imperial sculpted portrait of Marcus Aurelius. Now, Marcus Aurelius was Roman Emperor from 161 to 180 AD. He was 40 years old when he became the Emperor of Rome. He was also a Stoic philosopher. He was the author of the Meditations, a philosophical text. This is a gilded bronze equestrian statue. It was cast from bronze using the lost wax technique, so it's completely hollow on the inside. Originally, it would have been clad in gold, so imagine how impressive and how attractive it would have been to the passing eye. It was most likely commissioned by the Senate as a way to declare and advertise the emperor as a virtuous leader. Now, we don't know the exact date when this sculpture was executed. We know that it was completed sometime between 176 and 180 AD. What we do know is that in 176 AD, Marcus Aurelius had a double triumph over the Marcomanni and the Sarmatians. And the cloth saddle of the horse that you see is Sarmatian in character. So that has led art historians to conclude that this sculpture is referring to that victory. And by that reasoning, the earliest date which it could have been completed by is 176 AD. Now, this sculpture is actually the only equestrian sculpture of its size to have survived from antiquity. So the majority of them, and there would have been a lot of them, were actually melted down, and their bronze was used and recycled to create other objects such as cannons. This guy over here survived because he was thought to represent the Emperor Constantine, the emperor that made Christianity legal in the Roman Empire. So that's the only reason that he has not been melted down and turned into a cannon, for example. Concerning the sculpture's original location, we do not know exactly where it was originally placed. What we do know is that it would have been placed in a very conspicuous and prestigious location in Rome, because of course these portraits, which would have been omnipresent throughout the city of Rome, were very important means to promote the authority of the Roman emperors. We also know that in the 8th century it was placed near the Lateran Basilica. In 1538, it was placed on the Capitoline Hill by Michelangelo to become the centerpiece of his new design for the Campidoglio. And then years later, in 1981, as I already mentioned, it was later moved indoors into the Capitoline Museums for conservation reasons, and a replica was put in place of the original in the piazza. So this bronze sculpture is over life size. It's enormous. Its height measures to 4.24 meters, so it's incredibly imposing. And this very, very large size, of course, accentuated the power and the authority that Marcus Aurelius had as an ancient Roman emperor. Now, looking at this sculpture and standing next to it, you really get a sense of calm authority. He sits on this powerful horse and he's riding without stirrups. At the time, stirrups had yet to be brought to the West. Marcus's face is quite unemotional. He is effortlessly in full control of the large horse. You definitely get the sense of a responsible leader who has dutifully inherited his father's tasks. Marcus's right hand extends in a downwards diagonal with the fingers spread in a gesture that could be read as adlocutio, the gesture used by emperors when addressing their troops. His half-closed left hand once held the horse's reins. Notice that Marcus Aurelius is wearing civilian clothing. He's dressed in soft leather patrician boots and a tunic cloaked by a Paludamentum fastened at his right shoulder. The fact that he is not dressed in a general's armor emanates a sense of peace. He is depicted as a civilian leader as opposed to an all-conquering and violent emperor. His full beard and coiffed hair were part of a larger cultural currency of self-styling and heightened self-representation among the Roman elite in the 2nd century AD. So this portrait very much depicts a cultured and learned figure of urbanity. Now both Marcus Aurelius, but in particular the horse, is really astonishing in its rendition. It looks very true to life, and this shows you that back then in ancient Rome they had a very good understanding of human anatomy, but also of the anatomy of a horse, and they were able to replicate that in the material of bronze. Look at the musculature of the horse. It is very convincing in its rendition. Now the horse itself is incredibly animated. Look at the folds in its neck. It gives you a sense of Marcus's control over the animal. He is reining him back. Yet at the same time, the horse is very clearly striding forward, which is attested by its raised front leg, which is bent at the knee. So the artist has very effectively captured a moment of motion and made it timeless. There's a sense of tension, of movement, and balance in this sculpture. Now you're probably noticing that Marcus appears slightly too big for the horse. This is likely because the statue was cast in two separate pieces and then molded together. Now, according to a 12th century source, the Mirabilia Urbis Romae, which is an anonymous description of Rome's sites, the lifted hoof of the horse originally rested on the cowering body of a barbarian. And this presence of a submissive enemy definitely changes the statue. Without it, Marcus is shown as a powerful ruler, but he also has an impassive expression and his gesture is not overly oppressive. With the barbarian, the statue conforms more to typical depictions of Roman victory that was achieved through violence. Nevertheless, it would have shown Marcus as both military triumphant and also, and more importantly, as an emperor showing clemency towards his enemies. In this light, in this context, his gesture could be read as a gesture of clemency, Clementia, being offered to a defeated enemy. So it would have shown him as an all-rounded leader, both a civil and military leader. Alright guys, so that concludes this episode. I really hope you enjoyed learning about this sculpture, this antique work of art, which is really convincing in its depiction of the anatomy of a human being and a horse. And it actually became very influential for artists in the Renaissance and beyond when it came to executing portraits of important figures. I also really love this work of art because it gives you a taste of what it was like to live back in ancient Rome during the Roman Empire, when such portraits would have been omnipresent around the city. As always, let me know if you have any comments, questions, or requests for future videos, and I will get to it. Also, don't forget to check out my Instagram page and my blog for even more fast-paced content on art that is all around the world. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.